Deuteronomy 31, I'm going to start reading in verse 1. It says, And Moses went and spake these words unto all Israel, and said unto them, I am 120 years old this day. I can no more go out and come in. Also the Lord has said unto me, Thou shalt not go over this Jordan. The Lord thy God, He will go over before thee, and He will destroy these nations from before thee. And thou shalt possess them, and Joshua he shall go over before thee, as the Lord hath said. And the Lord shall do unto them as He did in Sihon and to Og, kings of the Amorites, and unto the land of them whom He destroyed. And the Lord shall give them up before your face, that ye may do unto them according to all the commandments which I have commanded you. Be strong and of a good courage, fear not, nor be afraid of them, for the Lord thy God, He it is that doth go with thee. He will not fail thee, nor forsake thee. And Moses called unto Joshua, and said unto him in the sight of all Israel, Be strong and of a good courage, for thou must go with this people unto a land which the Lord hath sworn unto their fathers to give them, and thou shalt cause them to inherit it. And the Lord, He it is that doth go with thee. He will be with thee. He will not fail thee, neither forsake thee. Fear not, neither be dismayed. And we'll stop there for now. Let's go ahead and be seated. Here's what we have going on here. The children of Israel, because of their disobedience, more specifically because of their lack of faith and their lack of trust in God, they've been made to wander the desert for the last 40 years. I made mention of it last week. That it was right at the beginning of where they started wandering. They've been made to wander the desert for the last 40 years, and at this point, here when we're in Deuteronomy 31, they are coming to the end of that. In just a few chapters, Deuteronomy will end. The book of Joshua will begin. Joshua will be their new leader. The first thing that we see in Joshua's time as their leader is them entering the promised land. So I mean, right off the bat, they are headed into the promised land. Remembering, Joshua is one of the two who came back saying, we can do this. He was one of the two spies that came back with a good report. He was one of them saying, this isn't a problem. Sure, there are giants, and yes, there are walled cities, but God's on our side. We can overcome. So as soon as Joshua's in charge, that's exactly what he does. They begin to take the land that was promised to them years before, and you look at, again, Joshua chapter 1, it starts with them entering the land. But back to our passage tonight, Deuteronomy 31, Moses knows he's nearing the end of his time as the leader of the children of Israel. So he calls together the children of Israel and says just that. Starts off with, I'm 120 years old. I can't keep doing this thing. You know, this has been a difficult job for Moses. I hesitate using the word job, but you get the idea. This has been a difficult job for Moses to lead these people. He, after fleeing Egypt himself as a young man for killing an Egyptian, then is sent back by God to convince Pharaoh to let the children of Israel, his slaves, leave. He's then faced with armies chasing them, people trying to kill them. He's faced with the divisions among the people that he's leading, some of his own family thinking that they should ease his burden by placing themselves in charge. What a blessing that is. He's faced with complaining people the entire way and people saying they wish they could be slaves again. He's faced disappointment of being so close to the promised land and then not being able to enter it yet. All sorts of different things that he has faced as their leader that's made this a very difficult job. And he finally says, look, I'm old. I can't do it anymore. But then he continues with it and tells them it's time to enter the land, and I can't. The end of verse 2, he tells them that, he says, The Lord thy God will go before thee, and he will destroy these nations from before thee, and thou shalt possess them, and Joshua, and he shall go with thee. And I'm reading verse 3, not verse 2. Let's try that again. Verse 2, And he said to them, I am 120 years old this day. I can no more go out and come in. Also the Lord hath said unto me, Thou shalt not go over this Jordan. So what he's saying is, look, you're here. It's time to go into the land. It's time to possess the land that God's promised to you so long ago. But for that to happen, I have to step aside. For you to take the next step forward, I have to step out of the picture. It's as if Moses is telling him, look, at this point, I'm what's holding you back. I'll give a bit of an example. I had been plumbing at this point probably for 2 to 3 years. And typically, if you're doing new construction plumbing, you start with running all of the water pipes. It never makes sense to me that you're going to do the thing that can cause the most damage the fastest when you're new, but that's how they all start you, is running the water pipes. But then after a little bit, they switch you into where you're doing the waste and vent pipes. And so I have been doing waste and vent for a year and a half, always working under the same guy. So because of that, if I had questions, I would just go ask him. And one day, he started the day saying, "You know what you're doing, so I'm going to drop you off and I'm going to leave, have the waste and vent done before I get back." And what he was doing was saying that him being there was holding me back, and I was relying on him, and when he left, I could take the next step, and did. That's in essence what Moses is saying here. It's time to take that next step, and that can't happen as long as I'm your leader. God's told me I can't go in. That can't happen as long as I'm leading you. But with that would come some panic. Because although they constantly complained about Moses, and although they didn't like him a whole lot at times, after following someone for this many years, there's a comfort level that's come. Even someone that you don't like, if they constantly provide for you for this many years, you begin to grow comfortable with them. You know that they can get the job done. You don't know that about the new guy yet. He might be great. He might be the best leader your nation has ever or will ever see. But at this point, you have no idea. It's the same reason why there's always a big upheaval every time there's a presidential election, because of the unknown. Even if we don't like the guy who's in office currently, at least we know what we're dealing with. And, there's a comfort level with that. But someone new, and you have no idea. This would have been a tense time for the children of Israel, a time, again, of unknown. But before Moses steps aside, he says, "Let me comfort you. You're going to go forward." And he gives these words of comfort. I divided them into 3 points this evening because we're Baptists, that's what we do, is give 3 points. So I divided it into 3 points this evening. Comfort that he gives them. If you will go with God, God is leading you into the promised land. If you'll go with God, he says these 3 things. Number one, he comforts them by saying, number one, remember who's leading you. Look at verse 3 through 5 again. It says, "The Lord thy God, he will go over before thee, and he will destroy these nations from before thee, and thou shalt possess them. And Joshua, he shall go over before thee, as the Lord has said, and the Lord shall do unto them as he did in Sihon and Og, kings of the Amorites, and unto the land of them whom he destroyed. And the Lord shall give them up before your face, that ye may do unto them according to all the commandments which I have commanded you." Notice what these verses say. The Lord shall go before thee. The Lord will destroy. The Lord shall do unto them. The Lord shall give them up. And then it's almost as if, and Joshua. It's almost like Joshua is an afterthought, because Joshua is secondary. He's not really leading. God is. God's really leading. It reminds me of in 1 Corinthians, where Paul is writing to them and talking about those arguing of who is of Paul and who is of Apollos. And what he's telling them is it doesn't matter who you heard preach or who you got saved under. What's important is what God did. The man doesn't matter. God matters. Kind of destroys the mentality of a lot of churches today, preaching about, the whole "it's all about you" idea. Sorry, no, it's not about you. It's all about God. That's what Moses is saying here. Look, people, it doesn't matter who the man is that's standing in front of you, because regardless of the man, it's God that's leading. It wasn't Moses then who led them out of bondage. He was the man that God used, but it wasn't Moses who led him out of bondage. I'm not going to have you turn back there right now, but you read about the plagues in Egypt, and you won't see anything about Moses bringing the plagues. What you see is God brought them. Moses had no power or ability or strength to do that on his own. He could do it because it wasn't him leading, it was God. It wasn't Moses who parted the Red Sea. Again, on his own, he had no ability to perform a miracle like that. Or on his own, it would have been a slaughter. And again, you turn back to the passage and you read that God parted the Red Sea for them to cross on dry ground. It wasn't Moses. It wasn't Moses who made it rain manna from heaven, the people complaining about needing food, and God said, here it is. And then again with the quail, it wasn't Moses who provided water from the rocks. I don't know if you've ever tried, but you can spend as much time as you like beating rocks with sticks, and I can guarantee that you aren't going to get water to come out of it. And we aren't talking just a little bit of water. I mean, we're talking enough water for millions of people. That had nothing to do with Moses. It was God. It wasn't Moses who protected them from their enemies. It had nothing to do with Moses' military training or the way he led the people to protect themselves or anything like that. The victories that they had along the way in their time getting from Egypt to here through the 40 years in the desert and all that, the victories that they had along the way were all entirely God. And here's what Moses is telling them. It doesn't matter who the man is that God sets up as your leader, because it wasn't me who led you out of bondage. It wasn't me protecting you. It wasn't me who provided for you. It was all God. And it still will be God when Joshua steps in. It still will be God. If you'll just go with God, it'll be God leading and not a man. Now this is not the message. It's a total side note, but it's in my notes. I can show you. Look, right here. It's in my notes. You can't see that, but I can. So since it's in my notes, it's not a rabbit trail. But you and I can take comfort in that same thought today, that it doesn't matter a whole lot who's in the White House. It doesn't matter a whole lot who's leading our country, who the man is. Because as a Christian who's going with God, regardless of who the man in the White House is, my hope isn't in the White House. My hope's in God. I don't get my direction from the Oval Office. I get my direction from God. And that doesn't change no matter who's sworn in as president. That's what Moses is reminding them. Doesn't matter who's up here. It doesn't matter who the man is standing in front of you leading you. Remember that God is really in charge. He says, number 2, remember that God doth go. We just read verses 3 through 5 a moment ago. I'm going to read verse 6 at this point, remembering what we saw in 3 through 5. Verse 6 says, be strong and of a good courage, fear not, nor be afraid, for the Lord thy God, He it is that doth go with thee. He will not fail thee, nor forsake thee. Verse 3, it says real similar, the Lord thy God, He will go over before thee. Remember that God is going. And then he points out some things that'll happen when God goes. He starts out with He's before. When you come to a problem, an enemy, a difficulty, God is already there. So He went before. He already knows about it before you ever did. There will never be a time, what he's telling them, there will never be a time where you will face an enemy and have to think, God, we need you here, because God was already there waiting for you to arrive. Which tells me he knew their problems before they did. Before they even realized there was going to be an enemy, God was there. As a parent, we can relate to this a little bit. I've had times with my kids that they're doing something and I can see the outcome before it happens. Anyone who has kids in here understands this, that you can watch what they're doing and you can tell this is going to end up with someone hurt. This is going to end badly for them. Why? Because I've been there. I've done that stupid thing before and hurt myself. God going before means God knew their problems before they did, but more than that, it means that He already had a solution before they even knew there was a problem. God was there and had a solution. He already had the plan worked out. Again, parents can relate. Times where you see your kids are going to run into trouble and you don't usually, I don't know any parents that when they see their kid is going to get hurt, just sit back and watch the crash happen. I mean, you intervene. You have a plan to deal with it. Zach, at this point, 3 years old, loves to ride his bike and is pretty good at it for the most part, except he cannot seem to grasp the idea that if you pedal backward on your bike, it stops. And he does good most of the time. He knows it. But every time he needs to stop for some reason, whether it's because we're going down a hill or a car or whatever, it's like he panics. So he just keeps pedaling and keeps rolling straight toward whatever it is. So as a dad, I watch for those things way in advance so that I can run and catch up to him and stop him. I have a solution. For a while, when he was first starting, I would keep him close enough and I tied a rope to the back seat of his bike and I held the other end of it. So then if he had to stop fast, I could just yank back on the thing and stop him. But that's what's happening here. God is going before and has a solution to their problem before they even see that there is a problem. When God goes, not only does he go before, but he destroys the nations before you. This goes right along with how I ended the last thought. He fights their battles for them. I've said this over and over, it seems like, in the last few messages of this series, that there is absolutely no way on their own that they could have won the victories that they did. And I know that we are 40 years later. Maybe they spent the last 40 years in the desert training their soldiers. But even had they're so undermanned compared to the armies that they face that on their own, every battle would have been a slaughter. And if you don't believe me, look at AI. Yeah. When they decided, hey, our army's pretty good at this point. It's a little city. We don't need God. And what happened? They got whooped. But when God goes with you, he destroys your enemies. And when God goes with you, he gives you the land. Look at verse 3. It says, the Lord thy God, he will go over before thee, and he will destroy the nations before thee, and thou shalt possess them. And Joshua, he shall go over before thee as the Lord has said. It goes on from there. I'm not going to have us go through all of it. Verse 4, it's talking about the land of them. You know what, I am going to read verse 4. And Lord shall do unto them as he did in Sihon and Og, kings of the Amorites, and unto the land of them whom he destroyed. Notice the passage, it uses the word possess. You're going to own them. That's a lot more than just you're going to live there. Talking about the nations that are there, you're going to possess them. You're going to own them. There's some ownership there. Often in the Bible you hear words like an inhabitant of the land. But that isn't what this is. This is ownership. My wife and I rent a house, and the situation is one that it's different than most rentals, but we rent. We live in the house, but we don't possess the house. We don't own it. Here's what this is saying. If you'll go with God, he won't just allow you to live in the promised land. What he's telling me, he's not just going to let you live there for a while. He's going to give it to you to own. It'll be your own. Just something different about ownership. And all of this was possible because God was going. Moses says, remember who's leading. Remember that God is going. And then lastly this evening, Moses says, remember that you have no need to fear. You have no need to fear. Look at verse 6 through 8. It says, be strong and of a good courage. Fear not, nor be afraid of them. For the Lord thy God, he it is that doth go with thee. He will not fail thee nor forsake thee. And Moses called unto Joshua and said unto him in the sight of all Israel, be strong and of a good courage, for thou must go with this people unto the land which the Lord hath sworn unto their fathers to give them, and thou shalt cause them to inherit it. And the Lord said, he it is that doth go before thee. He will be with thee. He will not fail thee, neither forsake thee. Fear not, neither be dismayed. Moses, in these 3 verses, 2 different times tells them, fear not, don't be afraid, nor dismayed. The first time he's addressing the crowd, the nation as a whole. The passage tells us that he's speaking to all the children of Israel. And he's addressing the crowd, if you will, telling them that time that he says this, he's addressing the nation as a whole, telling them all that he has up to at this point, and then continuing to give them comfort. He says not to fear or to be afraid. And then he turns to Joshua and repeats himself, saying there's no reason to fear or be dismayed. This is going to be an intimidating situation for the people, yes, but also for Joshua. And Moses realizes that. He was there. And he says it in verse 7. He's talking to Joshua in the sight of all Israel, be strong and of good courage, for thou must go with this people in a land. And I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I hear it coming from a man who's dealt with this difficult people saying, they're going to go in a land and you got to go with them. You're leading them. Good luck. He knows this is going to be a difficult situation. Anytime you have change, it's a scary thing. If not scary, at least it's an uneasy feeling when there's major change, which is why most people kind of reject the idea of change, even when it's a good thing. Something will come along and it's going to change life for the better, but we buck against it because it's going to change things. And these people are going to be facing a whole lot of change right now. You're going to have the change of a new leader. Moses out and Joshua in. And anytime there's a new leader, there comes with him the question of how's he going to lead? Change of a leadership potentially means a change of a lot of other things as well. He may change how we run things. He may change the way that we've always done things. For Joshua, though, the change in position would have also been scary. To this point, Moses has been the one taking all the heat. Anytime the people are upset, it's been Moses that they go running to complain. It's been Moses that they get mad at. It's been Moses that they've blamed at this point. Now, it's going to be aimed squarely at Joshua. This is a big change. On top of that, you've got a new mission. You have a new leader, but also a new mission. You just went from, in essence, for the last 40 years, their job was wander in the desert without dying, while waiting for the generation ahead of you to die so you can go on. That's been their job, is just to wander without dying for 40 years. Now all of a sudden you're charging headlong into a hostile country to take it over. That's a big change. That's a whole lot of difference in your mentality. You've just transitioned from wandering in a desert constantly on the defensive, constantly trying to watch your back and make sure that no one was coming behind you to attack you, asking permission of people to travel through their land, to now you're on the attack. You're headed into a country who knows you're coming. They know that you are claiming God is giving you their land and that you are there to kill them and send them packing. Life just took a major shift. And Joshua is now tasked with leading this group into this. These are some big changes that I guarantee a lot of people were thinking, this is scary. I can hear someone saying, maybe now that Joshua's here, maybe we should wander another year or two just to prove that he really knows what he's doing. I mean, do we really want to, this guy's in the first week we're going to go attack? Maybe we should prove him a little bit first, because if he doesn't, we're not going to get us all killed. Moses, speaking to both groups, though, says, don't be afraid. And this is the reason he gives. He gives two reasons. The first is, God won't fail you. God won't fail you. He says it both to the children of Israel and to Joshua, to the children of Israel in verse 6. Be strong and of a good courage, fear not, nor be afraid of them, for the Lord thy God, He it is that doth go with thee. He will not fail thee. Again in verse 8, and the Lord, He it is that doth go with thee. He will be with thee. He will not fail thee. Those things that He has promised, He will deliver on. You know how He promised you, children of Israel, to lead you? He won't fail. You know how He promised to protect you? He won't fail. You know how He promised to win the battles for you and to give you the land? He will, because unlike men, what God says He's going to do, He delivers on 100% of the time. He always comes through on His promises. But not only will He not fail you, He says He won't forsake you. Again, those same verses, verse 6, the very end of it, nor forsake thee. Verse 8, neither forsake thee, fear not, neither be thou dismayed. He'll stay with you through the good times and through the difficult times. And we know that during the stretch while they're taking the promised land, that there were some super high mountaintop times in life, and there were some super low valley times. Times where they thought nothing is going to be able to stop us, and then other times where they thought we're completely alone and abandoned. But through them all, God never forsook them, because they went with God. Because they went with God, He was the one leading. Because they went with God, He went before them. And because they went with God, they had no need to fear. I'll make a very quick and simple application, and then I'll be done. The words of comfort that are given to the children of Israel and then to Joshua can be applied to you and I. If we'll go with God, He will lead our way. If we'll go with God, He will go before us and have the solution to our problems before we even know we have a problem. And if we'll go with God, we have no need to fear. Doesn't matter what changes come or what unknowns lie ahead, we have no need to fear because He will not fail His promises to us. And He will not forsake us. So simply put this evening, let's go with God. Stop worrying about the unknowns. Stop making excuses why we can't. And just go.